Hello, welcome back to ACI 10, where Janice and I are taking you on a journey of exploring Master Shantideva's book, The Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life. I wanted to start today's class, which is our fourth class, with a little bit of review of what we've done so far. So let's talk about what we've learned, and then we'll do a short meditation. In class one, we learned about Master Shantideva's life and the story of this book, The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Remember, Master Shantideva lived around 700 AD. So it's interesting that this information that he gave us 1400 years ago is still relevant and very relevant in the world today. And that makes me wonder, have we not made any progress? Samsara, the wheel of life that goes around and around, suffering, birth, suffering, death, rebirth, that doesn't change until samsara is stopped. And what does that mean for us in our daily lives? Is that we have to stop acting the same old way and expecting new results. We have to have a new way of thinking, a new way of speaking, and a new way of acting if we want to get different results. So we can break the wheel using the information that Master Shantideva has given us. And a lot of teachers in our lineage have. They have seen emptiness directly, and they've given us the instructions of how to do it ourselves. So that's one thing we can learn about the history of this text. Another thing is that if you remember, Master Shantideva has that nickname, Mr. Three Thoughts. I forget the Tibetan. Busuku, Janice says. Mr. Three Thoughts, he appeared to the other monks to be lazy, good for nothing, only thinking about sleeping, eating, and pooping. But on the inside, he was deeply involved in incredible realizations. And then they didn't know that at the monastery until they tried to trick him into leaving the monastery by giving him an impossible task of giving a teaching and making the throne too high for him to get on. So if you recall, he just sort of floated up onto the throne, gave this amazing teaching, and floated off into the sky, even as he was doing the last chapter. So for us in our lives, that applies to not judging others. I also think that, how we interact with our world, our worldly things. We feel like we have to achieve worldly things to be valuable. I feel like I have to be busy to be, to have validation that I'm doing something important. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is to quiet down, go inwardly, go on retreat, and make progress there in a more quiet way. Not that we can't be out in the world. And bodhisattvas are known for being in the world, being active in a way, helping people in both worldly ways and in higher ways. Then in class 2, it was a sales pitch for what a bodhisattva is and what they have. They have bodhicitta. And the wish, bodhicitta, is the wish to reach total enlightenment for the sake of every living being. What made that wish so powerful was those two aspects, the infinite number of beings that we want to help, and to try to become the highest being we could possibly imagine who would have the ability to help that infinite number of beings. So it takes those two super high ideas. When we combine them together, this makes a perfect karma, a perfect good karma, which can counteract all the negative deeds we've ever done. And it helps us to having this wish in our daily life as we get up in the morning, get dressed, brush our teeth, eat our breakfast. If we have these two ideas in mind, that we want to help as many beings as we possibly can by creating the causes for us to become the highest being we can imagine, then even the small things we do all day become the causes for that to become true. That's the power of bodhicitta. We had some wonderful metaphors that it was bodhicitta is like a seed that is the cause for our enlightenment. It's the field that is the fertile field that is the cause of every good thing that we could possibly want. And I remember that it's like a sword that can kill all of our negative emotions so that we are no longer creating new negative seeds by having the habit of negative emotions that come up over and over again. So we can kill those negative emotions. It is like a fire at the end of the world that burns away all of the past negative deeds we've ever done. And that's going to be the topic of the next two classes, particularly class 4 and part of class 5. Before we get on to the new topic, though, let's also talk about class number 3. Yeah, class 3, which was about offerings. So that's such a wonderful thing to think about. We're already trying to think all day, like, how can we help and how can we better ourselves to be more helpful? Now to that, we can add this idea of offering, like all day long, making our life an offering, because we can offer things in our mind. We can offer things that no one owns. When we see something beautiful, a baby's smile, a beautiful sunset, we can offer that. And who are we offering to? Most traditionally is the 3 jewels. And we learned that the 3 jewels are the emptiness of the Buddha's mind, which is the very same emptiness that we ourselves possess. So how do we offer to emptiness? You know, we're taking refuge in that idea that we have the same emptiness that a Buddha has, so we can change. That our karma is what creates our reality and our perception of who we are, what kind of being we are. So offering to that very high idea is something that we can chew on. You know, how do we offer to an idea? Offering to our own emptiness, offering to the emptiness of others, the emptiness of Buddhas. And the other 2 jewels are the realization of emptiness in the minds of ourselves and others. That's the Dharma jewel. Also in a apparent way, it's the books protecting the teachings. And then the Sangha jewel is the people who have those realizations and the beings that have those realizations. So we're offering the beautiful things we see around us, the things we can imagine in our mind, the food that we're eating, to this highest ideal of being able to become one who can help others through body, speech, and mind. So that's something we can keep in mind all day, again, while we're brushing our teeth, while we're dressing, while we're eating, when we're speaking. Our words can become an offering. I take ballet class now. I started ballet about a year ago, and I try to make this movement of my body an offering. So making all of the beautiful things that we're doing, all of the good seeds that we're planting even higher by making them an offering. When we're enjoying something good, it comes from something good we did in the past also. So we're offering our own goodness. Like, wow, this is so cool that I'm experiencing something pleasant, and I want to offer that to all the living beings or to someone specific. And that increases the power. So next, we're getting on to this topic about purification. Let's talk a little bit about why. Why are we wanting to purify? What we've been talking about with offerings is this idea of preliminaries. We want to pave the way. We want to smooth the way to be able to have bodhicitta arise within our being. We can want it, we can hear about it and think that that would be cool. I want to be a bodhisattva. I want to have bodhicitta. But that doesn't necessarily change anything, just wanting it, because we still have negative habits where we're creating new negative bad seeds, and we have obstacles from our old negative karma, which is stored inside of us. So if we really want bodhicitta and we want to be able to see emptiness directly, then we have to plant a lot of good seeds. We have to stop creating new negative seeds, and we have to remove the obstacles of our old negative karma. So that's the topic we're on to now. We're paving the way, we're creating the causes for bodhicitta to be able to arise in our hearts. So to become a bodhisattva, we must stop collecting negative karma. We have to eliminate all our old bad karma, all of it. That sounds like a big task. And then collect only good karma. We don't have the ability to only collect good karma yet, or I don't, speaking for myself. You probably do. But I just can't stop myself from creating new negative karma yet. And that's why purification is important. Purification is the practice of wiping out old negative mental imprints. But it's not something we just do once in a while. It is something that we're going to be doing regularly. And hopefully, when we catch ourselves doing something negative, Janice is going to talk again about her mantra she has about stop, drop, and roll. That we have to have some tools to stop ourselves from continuing to do negative things. She also, very memorable to me, talked about a shock collar. Like if we could shock ourselves when we catch ourselves doing something negative. Well, we don't want to harm ourselves, of course, but we want to have some way of alerting ourselves that, hey, here comes that old bad habit. And when we catch ourselves, the old bad habit already started arising. That's why we noticed it. So then we need to be able to purify right away. The way we're going to purify and stop planting new negative seeds and purify the old seeds is with this process called the 4 powers, or the 4 forces. It's traditionally translated as by Geshe Michael. Generally, we call it the 4 powers. So we have to have some way of knocking out that negative karma, the old negative karma, and stopping and purifying it when we catch the negative seeds ripening again. We catch our old bad habits. And this is homework question 1 for those of you who are getting credit for this course, which is an important thing to do. So I hope that you will. So the 4 forces of purification are originally from the Sutra of the 4 Practices. I mentioned in a previous class that a sutra means it was spoken by Lord Buddha. And this is important that it comes from the Sutra on the 4 Practices, because in some of the schools of Buddhism, they say that once you've collected a negative karma, there is no way to purify it. So in this Mahayana path, we say that Lord Buddha did give us a method for purifying karma that we've already committed. Yes, it has to have some type of a result, but the result can be much smaller. It's like if you had a seed, say you wanted to grow a watermelon, and you had a watermelon seed. If you put the watermelon seed in the soil, you water it and give it sunlight and the right conditions, then it's going to grow. It's going to make more watermelons and many more watermelon seeds. But if you took that same seed and you put it out on the cement, on hot pavement, it's not going to be able to sprout at all. and the seed can become damaged so that it doesn't grow. In this tradition, we often say that instead of getting a big result from a negative deed that you might get, like if I harmed life, like say that I eat eggs and dairy, which I do, then I know that the chickens or the cows may not have a very happy life. And the baby boy chickens and the baby boy cows are probably going into the meat industry. So even though I'm trying to be vegetarian, if I'm eating something that caused some kind of harm, even vegetables being trucked from the field to the store is causing harm. And being human, I have to eat. So if I am harming others, this could be a cause for me to get cancer or have a heart attack. But if I'm doing my 4 powers regularly, then that cause, instead of being a cause for my future sickness, maybe it's just a slight headache. So this is the teaching about what happens when we purify. A big result might change into a small result. So this is interesting because it can mean that when you purify a lot, you start having some mini disasters. And this happened to me. I was doing a lot of purification about 3 years ago. I really wanted to change some of the things that I was seeing in my world, and I was using the 4 powers. And then I had a result, an unexpected result, that my car broke down and it was unfixable for the value of the car. So it was what we say totaled. Even though I didn't crash it, the engine was totaled. And insurance doesn't cover that. So it was a disaster for me. But when I thought about it, the car died instead of a loved one dying or losing my own life. And I felt it was very symbolic that I had cleaned out some negative seeds of loss. And I did lose something that was important, something I was using, but it wasn't the loss of a life of a loved one. So I felt that was a purification of a smaller result than something that could have happened. I had another situation 1 year ago where my partner, my beloved Ben, my life partner, had a heart attack. And it was something that could be medically, he could have died, but he didn't. They put a stent in his heart and they put him on medication, and he's much healthier now. He's doing really well now. And so that also felt like a purification. We came very close to a brush with death, but then everything was okay. So we can look at those mini disasters as purification of a lot of negative seeds burning off. We need to do the 4 powers because we're constantly planting negative seeds still, if you're like me. And it's just important to remember that we can't stop ourselves from acting out of habit yet, maybe. So keep an eye on how you can purify. So an example of someone who purified really beautifully is Lord Atisha. Lord Atisha was the teacher who brought Buddhism to Tibet. So he was traveling from India to Tibet, and he was said to have brought with him his most irritating student. And all of the students in Tibet said, this guy that you brought with you is so irritating. Everybody is annoyed by him. Why would you bring somebody like that with you on this long trip? And Lord Atisha said that he brought that student with him to help burn off his seeds of anger and irritation. So every time that the student was the apparent cause of irritation arising in Lord Atisha's mind, he would stop, get off of his horse, go to the side of the road, put out a little stupa, and do his 4 powers to purify that negative karma of anger in his mind. So we might not want to purposefully bring irritating things into our lives yet, but that's an example of how even a high practitioner is purifying and purposefully purifying their biggest mental affliction, whatever it is. So that's another good tip about purifying is think about what do you want to purify, and then keep your radar tuned for that particular mental affliction that arises over and over again for you, and go after it. So homework question number 1 was where the 4 powers came from, and that was the Sutra on the 4 practices by Lord Buddha. So let's talk next about these 4 powers and what they are. The first one is called the force of destruction. It's a very powerful way to damage negative karma that from a deed you've already done. I use the word regret because I'm going to use 4 R's, makes it easier for me to remember. So the traditional name is the force of destruction. I'm going to call it the power of regret because it gives in my mind the action that we take here. And we're going to talk more about these individually, but just briefly, Nampar Sunjin Petop. The power of regret is realizing that we've done something that we don't want to experience the result from. Okay, so we'll talk more about the difference between regret and guilt later. It's a very important distinction. So this is not about beating yourself up or feeling badly about yourself. It is realizing that you've done something that you don't want to experience the result from, because like makes like. The second one is called the force of the foundation. Here we're recalling emptiness and our bodhicitta. It's called the force of the foundation because when we fall down, when we've done something that we regret, we want to be able to push ourselves back up. If you're in quicksand, like the sand behind me on my screen share, we realized, oh, if we put a nice background, you wouldn't have to look at the brick wall behind us. Sorry about the brick wall in the first videos. We looked like we were in prison. Well, in a way we are. We're in the prison of our own mental afflictions. But here, when we've done a deed that we regret, we need to be able to push ourselves back up onto our feet and keep going. So if we don't have a foundation, we can't get back up. The foundation is our understanding of emptiness and seeds and the power of the wish to want to help as many beings as possible, an infinite number of beings, by becoming totally enlightened, becoming a being who knows how to help and has the power to help. And the love that forces us to help others. So that is recalling emptiness and seeds. And then number 3 in this presentation is rebalancing the scales, or the force of applying an antidote. Oh, let me say the Tibetan for the foundation is Tengi Top, and rebalancing Nyenpo Kuntu Chupe Top. In some presentations, the order is different, but today we're going with the order that Master Shantideva used. So for the third one, he has applying an antidote. We're going to get into this more in this class, but just as the name sounds, we're going to do something that's the opposite of what we did to rebalance scales. And the fourth one is the force of restraining from the bad deed. Once we've identified a behavior that is planting a negative seed, then we want to stop the behavior. We regret it, great. But if we regret it and then just keep doing it and not trying to stop, then it's not going to have, these 4 powers aren't going to work. We really need all 4 of these. So I call this the power of restraint. The 4 R's: regret, recall, rebalance, and restrain. On your homework, you can put those. It's great if you know the traditional name as well. The force of destruction, the force of the foundation, the force of the antidote, and the force of restraining from doing the deed again. Nyenpa le larndokpe top. Let's have a verse from Master Shanti Deva here to help us. All the objects you use are the same as something experienced during a dream. They are soon nothing but some memory. All things that have passed are no longer here. So that's a verse from the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life on this section about purifying. I chose this verse because the negative things that we do to plant negative karma are associated with something that we want. And the things that we want and the things that we don't want in this world, they're constantly changing. They're passing away. We already talked about how seeds end, good things end, bad things come up from our negative karma. So one way of restraining ourselves is by remembering that all of these things are very transient. They're just passing by, just like a dream. And so that's one way to help us stop the grasping and the aversion that are creating these negative karmas. We're going to be talking more about that, especially in class 5, about how our chasing after things we want and trying to push away things we don't want are creating these negative karmas. There's a question that comes up, and this is homework question 3. And this goes back to some Buddhist thinking says that once you've collected a karma, there's nothing that you can do. So what does it mean to collect a karma? Some karma is much more solid than others. So if we have these 4 steps in place when we do an action, then we can say that the karma has been committed and collected. So the 4 things are that we're misunderstanding the object. We think that it exists from its own side. We're doing action with ignorance or having thoughts, with the misunderstanding that things are coming from them towards us. Unfortunately, that's the way things appear all day long to me. So I am tainting everything I do with this misunderstanding because it looks like it's out there to my senses. But if we study emptiness and apply emptiness, we can start to change intellectually. We can understand that what my senses are perceiving came from something before. That I projected out the things I see, the things I hear, the things that I smell or taste. Those are projections coming from my mind, identifying something as sour when I'm eating. And then I label it as a lemon. And then I label it, do I like lemons or do I not like lemons? So there's labels upon labels. And we can start to see that even the shapes and colors around us are coming from our projections. But if we do an action, a negative action, with a strong sense that it's bad from its own side, there's something out there, an irritating person who's irritating from their own side, Everybody sees that person as irritating. And then I yell at them. That misunderstanding is in the seed, and it's making that negative karma stronger. So the second thing that needs to be in the seed to make it a strong collected karma is this sense of wanting something that's pleasant or not wanting something that is unpleasant. So in this example where it says you want the object, we're actually looking at misunderstanding something that we like. So say I want a nice pair of red sunglasses. I see those red sunglasses as coming from their own side. I like them and I want them. So I'm grasping for them. And then number 3 is where we start really getting into trouble, is that I'm willing to push Janice out of the way to get to the sunglasses first. You know, and I catch myself doing this just the other day. Oh, this really cool thing happened to me self-existently from its own side. I got a prize of $1,650 to buy an e-bike. And I bought an e-bike the other day. Janice doesn't even know this. And actually, I didn't really buy it because with the money from this raffle that I won, it's a rebate lottery and another rebate, the e-bike was practically free. So a bunch of people in town got this free e-bike offer at the same time. And I've been wanting an e-bike, but I didn't want to spend the money. So I thought, and I told Ben, we're going to go look at the e-bikes. And I'm like, we've got to get there fast because there's a lot of other people in town wanting e-bikes today. And I don't want all the e-bikes to be gone when I get to the store. So here I've been studying for 10 years. I still am going to try to beat my neighbor to the store to get the e-bike that I want. And of course, I think it's coming from its own side. And then that's how I've collected a bad karma. And it's kind of sad because I want an e-bike so I don't pollute, so I can ride my e-bike and protect the environment. But I collected a bad karma by having the thought of wanting to beat out other people to get that e-bike. So, but here's the homework question. Can we still use the 4 powers? Can I still use the 4 powers against my bad seed that I planted from wanting this e-bike by beating out the neighbors? And the answer is yes. The 4 powers will work to lessen. I will get some result, but if I do the 4 powers strongly and I really understand where I went wrong, how I planted a negative seed when I was actually trying to do something good, then it's like putting that seed out on pavement. Maybe it won't even be able to sprout at all, or maybe it'll send out a tiny sprout and then wither away. So we can use the 4 powers even when we have all the causes to have committed and collected a karma. It's stored in that black bag of negative seeds, but we can damage those seeds. And we have to be able to, because we have so much bad karma from time infinitely going backwards, that if we couldn't damage the negative karma and stop that obstacle, we would never be able to reach total enlightenment. So we're going to go into that third step, the antidote, the third of the forces, which is rebalancing, or the force of applying an antidote to balance the scales. The first way we can do that is by studying the scriptures. Learning Dharma. In our tradition, we don't stop studying. It's not like you go to 4 years of college and then you stop. We keep on studying. We have a plan of study that stretches out for years ahead of us. Why is that? Why did the lineage have this tradition of constant study? And it's because it's an antidote to our misunderstanding, especially when we study emptiness. It's a very powerful antidote, and it keeps us thinking about emptiness and remembering seeds, creating this new habit. The second one is to meditate on our understanding of emptiness, whatever our understanding of emptiness is. That's something that evolves over time, and from day to day, it changes. Sometimes we have a stronger understanding of emptiness. We can apply it we can apply wisdom to our daily life more. And other times we're in a bad mood, we're having problems, and it's all we can do to remember that things are constantly changing and this too shall pass. So whatever our understanding of emptiness is on a particular day, take a break and contemplate, even over a cup of tea, or sit down on your meditation cushion. And you can analyze emptiness as it applies to your life right now. You can also pause on that feeling of an absence. There is nothing that's not coming from my seeds. Try to find that feeling of looking for something that's there and not finding anything there. And stay in that space. It's a very powerful antidote to our negative deeds. A third way to rebalance the scales when you're doing the 4 powers is to recite secret words. That sounds very mysterious, but secret words technically means a mantra given to you in the higher teachings. So I can't share any secret words with you because they're secret. But if you have a mantra that you're using already, if you don't have secret mantras, perhaps you have a mantra that you like. And reciting that mantra is a powerful antidote. Does the mantra work from its own side? Is there some magic in those words that will damage negative deeds? No, I think you know the answer. There's nothing about those words that works from its own side. So why would reciting secret words be a powerful antidote to negative deeds and help you purify negative deeds from the past? It has to do with our faith that there is something out there, not from its own side, but there's a path that can help us. It's this path of bodhicitta, of wanting to help others. The power of the words have meaning that is about helping others and purifying our world. Understanding emptiness, like the mantra in the Heart Sutra, which is about emptiness. Gate, gate, paragate, parasangate, soham. That is a powerful mantra about emptiness. It's not a secret mantra. So it helps us to affirm to ourselves when we hear ourselves saying this powerful mantra that this is important to me, that emptiness will change, that my understanding of emptiness will change my world. And we're repeating over and over to ourselves that there's a path to changing the world and changing myself. The fourth one is making physical representations. So this is to draw or make an image of a Buddha or a teacher. There's a lot of ways we could do this. One of the traditional ways are making these little clay sculptures of Buddhas, and people make a lot of them. I've never done that myself. But what about when I take care of an image, if I frame a picture or clean the pictures around the altar, taking care of the representations of Buddha or teachers that I have around me? So some type of physical way of bringing the images into our lives and honoring them. That's making physical representations. The fifth way is to make offerings. We already had the class about offerings. We can make formal physical offerings on our altar, in our water bowls, in our offering bowls. But we know that we can also offer things that nobody owns. We can offer things in our minds. We can make offerings of the small good things that we're doing all day long. We can make offerings of the things that might seem like mundane that we do all day long, driving the car, walking places. If when we're walking, we're thinking about helping others, we're walking someplace, why are we walking? If we think about that and offer our good intention, then we're damaging our negative seeds. And the last one, number 6, is reciting names of high beings. This is, again, a mantra. And a name mantra can be very powerful, not from its own side. We can have the name mantra of Lord Buddha, Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakyamuni Soha is Lord Buddha's name mantra, or a name mantra of one of your teachers. There's a lot of name mantras out there. Why would repeating the name of a high being be helpful? It's cool because they have this in other traditions too. Christianity has this with Hail Marys. There's asking for help from high holy beings. It's showing our mind that we believe that there is a path and that there's other beings who have taken this path and they have the ability to guide us and help us. Anyone who's reached Buddhahood can see into our minds right now and know how to help us. They can appear to us as our friends, as our students, as our partners in our homes. So when we're reciting the names of high beings, we're really begging for help. And we know because of our seeds that there can be high beings and that they can help us. So all of these things are antidotes used in the 4 forces. And this is the third of the 4 forces, rebalancing with an antidote. So you'll be using one of these things as a specific antidote for a specific action. So for me, competing to try to get an e-bike before other people in town could get an e-bike, I could pick one of these things. I could meditate on the emptiness of the e-bike, the emptiness of me being able to have an e-bike, the emptiness of everybody in town who would ever want an e-bike to have an e-bike. Everyone could have one. The emptiness of everybody in the universe having what they want. Every being could have everything they could possibly need, everything they could possibly want, because of the seed, the good seeds that we can plant and that I can plant to see everybody getting what they want. So that might be a great meditation as an antidote for my example. Another thing I'd like to say about rebalancing is we can also make a makeup activity. Other than these 6 things that are traditional, I could help somebody else get an e-bike as a makeup activity for wanting to compete to get an e-bike. Actually, I know someone who wants an e-bike. So I could come up with a plan of helping that person get their e-bike. And in addition to meditating on emptiness, reciting secret words, I could do a physical act of helping someone else get an e-bike and dedicate that to wiping out the negative seed I created. So the most important one is studying and contemplating, meditating on emptiness. Why is that? Janice is going to be in the next class talking more, about the 3 poisons. But emptiness is an antidote to the 3 poisons because emptiness stops our misunderstanding. And remember, we talked about how do you collect a negative karma? The first thing is you have to have misunderstanding. If we can damage the misunderstanding, thinking that things are coming at us from our own side, that e-bikes come from competing for e-bikes, that I got the certificate, the credit for the e-bike because I applied for it and I sent it into the lottery, and just luck was what caused me to get that voucher. That's all misunderstanding. That's not where my e-bike came from. My e-bike came from helping other people get what they want in the past, helping other people change their actions to be less harmful to the environment. And that's my e-bike came from my past good deeds. So when we understand and contemplate and meditate on emptiness, it will damage the three poisons: ignorant liking, ignorant disliking, and ignorance itself. That's the most powerful antidote for the power number 3. Master Shantideva went into the 4 steps of the first force. That was the force or the power of regret. Let's talk just a little bit more about regret versus guilt. And I think Janice is going to talk about this too. No, she's not. She's giving the negative over there. So I'll make sure to make this distinction. We were talking about it before class. Westerners, maybe people all around the world, but people in the United States, a lot of us have this guilt, this reaction to doing something that we feel badly about, and we feel guilty. We feel that we've done something wrong, and it's this uncomfortable, nasty feeling inside of ourselves, like there's something wrong with us. It's like shame and guilt. And if you're like me, maybe you did some things in the past that you really feel bad about, and that you hurt somebody. My example of one of the things I'm most ashamed of is I got married when I was very young, and that marriage ended in a divorce 3 years later. I got married when I was 21, and I have a lot of guilt around it because I betrayed my husband. I broke my vows and I betrayed my husband. You know, I've done a lot of purification on that, and it no longer, when I say that, it doesn't bring up this icky, guilty feeling inside of me anymore. That was 30, almost 40 years ago. So it took a long time for me to get over that. And I didn't get rid of that yucky feeling until I did the 4 powers repeatedly on that action. Guilt is not helpful. Guilt is actually a negative emotion that's planting more negative seeds. It's a kind of anger at ourselves. And it has to do with how we think other people see us also. Like, we think other people would judge us. Our parents told us, this is right, this is wrong. You're bad if you do this wrong thing. You're good if you do this right thing. And it instills in us this negative feeling when we do something wrong. So let's make a distinction here between that guilt of, oh, you're a bad girl, you're a bad boy, you've done something wrong, and this feeling of regret. So there's a great story, traditional story, to help us understand regret. And that's 3 people walk into a bar. They sit down at the bar and they tell the bartender, you know, we want a drink. And the bartender says, well, what do you want? And they see this sort of weird looking bottle up on the shelf, and they confer amongst each other and they say, oh, you know, that looks kind of interesting. Never saw anything like that before. Let's get that bottle of brown liquid up there. And so they ask the bartender for that. And the bartender says, okay, if that's what you want. And he sets the bottle down with 3 glasses, pours the liquid into the 3 glasses. And the first person, I was going to say guys, 3 guys walk into a bar. That's a traditional way to start a joke in America, but I think these are mixed. Guys, gals, all different kinds of people. The first one takes their shot glass, drinks it down. Salud. Then the second one, a couple minutes later, well, about a minute later, takes their glass, says a toast, drinks it down. Then the third person, there's a little gap, and they make a toast and drink it down. They're all feeling pretty good about themselves. It didn't taste that bad. They tried something new. But all of a sudden, the first one starts choking, making weird sounds, turning a funny color. And the other two are looking at that first person, and then it falls off his stool dead. And like the other two are like, whoa, what the heck is going on? And then the second person starts to choke and cough and turn blue and falls off their stool dead. Okay, now this third person is looking at this going on, and they know that it's the liquid that they just drank that killed the other two. And what is the sense that they have? This is what I want you to try to imagine. How would it feel like to know that you just drank something that's about to kill you because you saw it happen to these other two people? That is regret. Like, oh, shoot, I wish I hadn't done that because I know it's going to have a bad result. So think about that. You can review that story in your mind and see if that helps you get this feeling of regret. Master Shantideva has some ideas for how we can get this sense of regret. Remember, for us, what we're trying to develop is a regret that we planted a negative seed, we did a negative action, we know that like makes like, and also seeds grow. So we're going to get a similar but even bigger result from the negative thing we did, or the negative thought we had, or the negative words we said. That's the regret we're looking for. Master Shantideva has some tips. Developing regret attained through considering the way in which a negative deed has been committed. So, what does this mean? That we regret that we did it with misunderstanding, that we wanted something and that we were willing to hurt somebody to get it. Those things that we went through already, like we committed the deed in a certain way and we regret that we were willing to hurt somebody to do it. We can develop regret out of fear that we might die while we still possess the karma of negative deeds. This is a big deal in this lineage, in our Buddhist training, is we might not yet believe that there's past and future lives. But one of the ideas of karma is that it carries on from one life to another. We don't burn off all the old karma. And in fact, that's why we have another rebirth. It's because we have leftover seeds that propel us into another life. So what happens if we have a lot of negative deeds at the time of our death? It can throw us into a lower rebirth or a very negative rebirth. So we can develop fear of that. The more negative deeds we have floating around in our mind stream, the more likely it is that those negative seeds are going to influence what happens in our next life. So that's something we can chew on by reducing our negative actions, using the 4 powers to clean up old negative deeds, and planting new positive seeds with our bodhicitta and our offerings. We are increasing the odds that our rebirth is going to be good. And in fact, one of the benefits of bodhicitta is that you can't take a lower rebirth when you really achieve this sense of wanting to help all living beings by becoming totally enlightened. So that's an antidote. But the fear of negative deeds influencing us at the time of our death is one way to develop more regret. It's like drinking that poison. Uh-oh, what did I do? We can develop regret by considering the negative deeds which are meaningless. And remember that slide about things being like a dream. we're willing to do negative things to protect things or get things that aren't going to last anyway. And that includes doing something to protect even our family or our country. If we're willing to hurt others to protect someone that we care about, it doesn't make any sense, because this life doesn't last. But the negative deed that we commit does carry on and can grow and cause us to see more pain in the world around us in the future. So it never makes any sense to commit a negative deed to protect something in this current life. We find other ways to protect, like bodhicitta. Bodhicitta protects everybody. And we can also develop regret by learning to fear negative actions. So that's, really kind of a repeat of what we've already talked about. We fear negative actions because we know we're going to get the results. But do we really have that sense within us? What kind of negative actions are we doing every day that we don't take seriously? So this is an invitation to really look at what negative actions we might have that we just think are normal, or we're just used to doing them, so we think they're fine. Like my example of eating dairy. That might not be negative for everybody, but for me, it is a negative deed, because when I'm eating dairy or eggs, I do have it in the back of my mind that I'm harming life. And I know that harming life is something I don't want to do. But I don't fear the negative action enough to really stop it and regret it and do the 4 powers on it. And if I don't try to stop, the 4 powers aren't going to work anyway. Okay, so these are some ways of developing our regret more deeply, according to Master Shantideva. There's a little bit more information about the second power of recalling. What does it mean to recall emptiness and recall bodhicitta, the power of the foundation? So taking refuge is part of that. Taking refuge in the 3 J's, the 3 jewels, that is. And that's another way of talking about taking refuge in emptiness. It's the more traditional way, as when taking refuge in the 3 jewels, the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel. But as we've already talked about, the Buddha jewel is really the emptiness of the Buddha's mind. It's the Dharmakaya. It's the emptiness that we also possess. Our mind is not fixed from its own side. What we experience, every thought we experience, every emotion we experience is coming from seeds arising in our mind constantly, constantly changing. The types of actions we do today will affect what arises in our mind tomorrow. Will stinginess arise in my mind, or will generosity arise in my mind? Because of the emptiness of my mind, that will change. And that's taking refuge in the Buddha jewel, the emptiness of the Buddha's mind. Taking refuge in the Dharma jewel is taking refuge in the direct experience of emptiness, which I haven't had yet. So I can take refuge in the teachings on how to do that. And my efforts to understand intellectually what emptiness is, how to apply it to my life today, and how to create the causes so that I can see emptiness directly in the future. It's important that we have a regular meditation practice. It's said that it's impossible to see emptiness directly unless you're in a deep state of emptiness. A deep state of meditation. There's a sort of a level of meditation that you have to be at before you can have this experience of the mind getting out of conceptual thought and seeing ultimate reality. So when I'm recalling emptiness, seeds, when I'm taking refuge as one of the powers to damage my negative seeds, having a regular meditation practice is going to be an important part. And recalling, wow, am I meditating regularly? How can I improve that? And the third jewel is the people who have seen emptiness directly, Aryas, taking refuge in Aryas. That means going to teachers, being able to hear the teachings, receive teachings from people who know the path. And the other thing that we recall is our own bodhicitta, that we have the wish. What is the wish? Remember the definition: the wish to reach total enlightenment for the benefit of every living being. Those two powerful things. So we're recalling those two powerful things. We're also recalling in this presentation that there's people and beings who have bodhicitta and they want to help us. Their deepest desire is to personally help us. So we can ask them for help. So we can recall our own bodhicitta and we can call on those who've already developed bodhicitta. And thirdly, another foundation is to commit to carrying out their wishes. So these great teachers, they have a wish also. And they communicate that wish to us in different ways through the teachings that we get, and maybe even through personal instructions from your personal teacher. So when we are carrying out their wishes, that is part of this foundation that builds this foundation that we can push ourselves back up and carry on our efforts to stop negative actions, damage old negative karma. All right, so that is the power of foundation. So let's just review the first power is regret. We wish we hadn't done it. And then the second one is this recalling, emptiness and seeds. We're really recalling that there's a way out of this problem. We're recalling the method, the path that we're going to use. We're going to use our understanding of emptiness and seeds and carrying out the wishes of our teacher to damage the negativity that we've done and to do it differently. We know it can be different because of seeds and emptiness. Then the third one is the antidote. We went over a bunch of different antidotes. And the fourth one is the power of restraint, which we didn't go into much here. Is that, hang on a second, let me consult with my co-teacher. Are you talking about the power of restraint much? Okay, so it's important to understand that the power of restraint is something that we are going to stop doing this deed again. So I'm going to try to stop competing over e-bikes. Well, I already have an e-bike, so I know I can stop competing over e-bikes probably for the next week. Okay, so I can make a promise to myself that I won't compete over e-bikes for the next week. So not only is it stopping, but it's setting a time frame of how long you're going to try to stop something. Now, if I tried to set a promise to myself that I will not compete with others to get what I want for anything, I might not be able to keep that promise for very long. So I can say for the next hour, I am not going to compete to get what I want. And I think I can remember for the next hour. I'm here, Janice is going to be teaching next. I'm not going to try to compete for attention with her. I'm going to sit back and enjoy her teaching. So I've made a promise for a certain amount of time I can keep. That's the important thing when you're thinking about restraining. But restraining, trying to stop the deed is essential. It's a really important fourth power. So don't leave that one out. If we have a habit of doing something negative, like drinking alcohol, for instance, We might intellectually know that it's something that's hurting ourselves, keeping us from thinking clearly. Maybe we hurt other people. If we have a serious alcohol problem, we might behave badly when we drink, hurting ourselves and others. So that's something we're going to definitely want to work on and get outside resources to help us stop drinking alcohol in a negative way, or maybe stopping totally. But it's important that we make a commitment that we feel like we can keep. Maybe it's only 5 minutes. And every minute that you restrain from doing that repeated negative activity is building up powerful seeds. So don't be discouraged if you have a habit that's very difficult to break. It could be a habit of criticizing a loved one. It could be a habit of eating cheese. Whatever it is that you want to change, just don't feel guilty. Stop it for a certain amount of time, make a promise to yourself that you can keep. And every time you resist doing that thing for even 1 second, you're building up powerful seeds to be able to stop in the future. So here on my last slide, there's a homework question about sickness and death, particularly the pain of death. And the homework question says, why does Master Shantideva use an analogy of having your limb ripped off as the terror of death, like the type of fear we'll face at death? And so Master Shantideva is using this example of when one of our limbs gets damaged, or we're going to see that it's going to be cut off, how terrified we would be to lose even a part of ourselves. To lose my hand. If you told me you were going to cut off my hand and you put it on a block and brought out a chopping block, there would be such a feeling of terror in my own mind. Shantideva is asking us to try to imagine that, and then imagine how much worse it would be if you were about to lose your life. The terror that we might experience at the time of death. So he asks us to think, how much worse must it be for our mind to face our own death? And why is he bringing that up is because it's our negative karma which causes our sickness and our death. So the more negative karma we have in that black bag that we're carrying around, the more terror and pain we're going to experience at the end of our life. So by cleaning up our negative karma, doing the 4 powers, and damaging those negative seeds so they're not even stored anymore, they've ripened as something smaller, or they've been damaged and they're gone, it's going to help us to know when it's time to let go of this body, that our good karma is ripening into another type of experience where we are able to help others. We're going on into this new type of being, bodhisattva. We're carrying forward as a bodhisattva and not as a suffering being. So it's another encouragement about why we should purify our negative karma. I think that's everything I have in this class. So thank you very much. And Janice has a little bit more about the 4 powers to talk about. And then she's going to be talking about creating good karma. So look forward to hearing her class. And thanks a lot for watching the recording. We'll see you next time.